how far have you seen the improvement being done by the government in fixing this migrant issues, gender-based issues?
One of the things that we do have in Australia is we have quite a large focus on gender as an issue. And there are regulations around, through the Workplace Gender Equality Act, looking at ways that we can improve outcomes for women in the workplace. So you'll find that in Australia, government organisations, universities, other public sector types of organisations lead in terms of best practice policy and practices and programs. And you'll find that because of what they offer in terms of employment conditions, they attract a lot of women into the workforce. One of the interesting things that came to my mind as I was engaging with the literature was there are also many very highly skilled migrants that come into Australia that don't find commensurate employment.
Dr. Susan Ressia is an associate professor at Griffith University specializing in gendered and race-based violence, sexual harassment, skilled migration, and employment equity. She co-authored the Research Handbook on Gender, Work, and Employment Relations and recently co-led the Australia Awards short course AUS4 ASEAN Green Skills in TVET, promoting sustainability and green skills in Southeast Asia.
What motivates you to take on these research topics?
So when I was doing my MBA, I was contacted by the honours coordinator and who had identified that I had been progressing very well in my studies. They invited me to become part of the honours program. So I thought, I've got a research question. I want to find out about organisations that have good workplace, family-friendly policies. We don't want to have barriers for them in terms of continuing their careers. So, you know, the importance around family-friendly practices is really key in retaining women, and for the organisation as well as for the individual as well. Women then feel, because they are naturally, you know, the idea is they're naturally geared towards these caring types of professions. You know, many women, you know, felt, you know, they'd come to Australia, they couldn't use their skills. How could they contribute?
Hi Hivers, thank you for joining me in this podcast with myself, Romora Edward Sitorus. Today we have a very special guest, a very distinguished guest, Dr. Susan Ressia. Thank you so much for coming here.
You're most welcome, Romora. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Dr. Susan Ressia, or usually we call her Sue, is an associate professor at Griffith University. She is someone with an extensive research on gender and race-based violence, sexual harassment, skill migration, intersectionality, and equity in employment. She is an active contributor to international employment relation bodies and a co-author of a very influential book entitled Research Handbook on Gender, Work, and Employment Relation. Recently, Dr. Ressia also co-led and facilitated the Australia Awards short course, AUS for Asian Green Skills in TVET. So currently we are in Canberra, Australia, and I'm so grateful that Susan has helped us giving her insight during this short course, which we could later bring back to our country. So we have a lot of best practice to share. And today, we would like to learn from Susan on this topic about promoting gender equality, disability, and social inclusion, or GETC, in the workplace. Without further ado, Susan, I will ask you some questions to start.
Yes.
You have a very interesting research interest. Could you share what motivates you to take on these research topics?
Absolutely. I'm most happy to share my experience with you and with your viewers as well. How I started out in the gender equality space was I was working for a large corporation in information technology, a large consulting firm, and they said that they were a family-friendly workplace, and this is one of the reasons that attracted me to work for that organisation. I was headhunted at that time, and so I ended up joining the organisation, and I was studying my master's program at the time, and my Master of Business Administration.
Well, studying and working at the same time.
I was studying and working, so I was studying part-time and working full-time, and we were working on a big IT implementation project. And the hours of working were very long, and I didn't find them family-friendly. And so when I was doing my MBA, I was contacted by the honours coordinator, and who had identified that I had been progressing very well in my studies. I'd been achieving a grade point average, a high grade point average. So they invited me to become part of the honours program. And I was like, oh, okay, what sort of question would I research?
Right.
And so because of my experience of working in this organisation that promised so much, they said they had these policies, but in practice they weren't being performed. So I thought, I've got a research question. I want to find out about organisations that have good workplace family-friendly policies. So I ended up doing my honours year dissertation, researching in the family-friendly, looking at parental leave. But what I did was I looked at it from the perspective of best practice organisation.
Right.
So you'll find that in Australia, government organisations, universities, other public sector types of organisations lead in terms of best practice policy and practices and programs. And you'll find that because of what they offer in terms of employment conditions, they attract a lot of women into the workforce.
Right.
So my project at that time, it was a small 12-month project, and I interviewed a range of women.
For your dissertation? For
my dissertation, and presented some findings on that. And of course, we know that, the benefits of providing family-friendly workplaces, providing, return programs for women who are feeding children and those sorts of things work very well. And it's about attracting, of course, recognising women are skilled, talented. We don't want to have barriers for them in terms of continuing their careers. So, the importance around family-friendly practices is really key in retaining women, and for the organisation as well as for the individual as well. So that was my honours year. And my PhD, my honours supervisor at the time said to me when I submitted my thesis, and they said, okay, Sue, how about doing your PhD?
Wow.
And I was like, I hadn't ever thought to do a PhD because I was working in industry, and I was, okay then. And she said to me, what would you like to study? And I said, well, actually, I'm really interested in disadvantaged groups. I've done a study on women, but I'm really interested in the impact of migration on migrants. And at that particular time, there had been in the media issues around migrants coming to Australia who were experiencing very bad working conditions. They'd come on these sort of temporary visa programs. And I could see migrants were living in very bad conditions, being paid very poorly. And I just I just thought that this was just terrible. Right. And I wanted to do something to change that. I wanted to understand the experiences of migrant workers and how we could improve outcomes. Right. So I set about, I got accepted into the PhD program based on my honours results. Okay. I was offered a scholarship. Wow. And so that was fantastic. And so I started to, in my first year of my PhD, because PhDs are 3 to 4 years. Yeah. I started in my first year, my confirmation year, building towards that. I was looking at Australia, the landscape in terms of migration, understanding the migration policies, but doing a lot of reading about the literature. And one of the interesting things that came to my mind as I was engaging with the literature was there are also many very highly skilled migrants that come into Australia that don't find commensurate employment. So you might be an engineer, you might be a woman who's an engineer in, you know, a foreign country. They're coming to Australia based on their skills, but they're not realising the potential in the Australian labour market. Yes. But also the individual is impacted because they're not working in the job that they've invested time and skills and, you know, and being a major reason for why. I see. So, you know, we have a skilled occupation list that identifies where there's gaps. Right. People migrate to fill those gaps, but the outcomes were not that they were filling the gaps. Right. So this actually created another question for me. And so I changed my research direction to look at professional, skilled migrants, and through that, I spoke to a range of women, some men as well.
By skilled migrant, you mean those who are looking for engineering jobs?
Yeah, so the very sort of highly professional. So it can be in civil engineering. Also teaching, you know, there were a few teachers as well that had come in. Lawyer, I had a lawyer as well. And the participant group that were my target were from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. So non-English speaking background migrants, because the literature told me that Western migrants from the US, the UK, were more likely to find work and actually improve on their, you know, experiences from their home country. I see. So I was wanting to understand the experiences of people that were more disadvantaged in our labour market. I see. So the focus, and particularly skilled women, because when they migrate, the majority of the time they're migrating with family. Yeah. So they're migrating with young children.
Directly? So they come directly with their family, or they come first and then their family follows suit?
So generally with the particular people that I spoke with, they would either be the primary applicant in the migration process because they had the skills and qualifications to meet the skilled occupation list, or their husband may be the primary migrant, and they would come as a secondary migrant with their children. Right. But they would be equally as skilled. So they'd be coming as a family, but usually it's one person that, you know, is the primary migrant, and it's based on their skills, their age, and a range of other things in coming into Australia that they've filled the skilled occupation list. So it's a point system. Right. And if they meet the point requirements, they get invited to apply to migrate to Australia. And there's a range of different migration programs, which I'm sure we probably don't have time to go into today.
Unfortunately, their language has an accent.
Yes. However, language is also on the skill requirements. So the IELTS, there's recognition there. But that can play into the outcomes of this particular group. So accent, employers not recognising overseas qualifications, even though they've been recognised through our migration system. So there is this disadvantage, there is this sense of discrimination in the labour market in terms of this group of particular migrants that I had the privilege to follow their journey into employment, or what type of employment that they gain through the process. So I guess that was why I was, it really concerned me that we have a migration program. There's high expectations. People meet those high expectations, but the outcomes for them were not as what they expected. And for me, as a researcher, is going, well, what's actually happening here? Why is this happening? We're almost like selling a false promise that, so how can we go about making some change? And I guess that's, as researchers, as you would know, we research a problem so that we can then say, well, this is what's happening, so that policymakers can implement some change or make change to programs or whatever. So,
and realizing Australian dream.
Yes,
at the end.
absolutely, absolutely. So that became my passion. I did my Ph.D. and I've published out of that as well. And of course, because the interest was very much from a gender and migration perspective, I used intersectionality theory as my theoretical framework.
What is that?
So intersectionality theory was coined by an academic in the United States called Kimberly Crenshaw. So this was back in the late 1970s, where she became aware of the outcomes for people of minority background, like Black minority background, where employment policies had changed in the States. People from minority background were getting employed into organisations, but when there were downturns in the labour market, the last in were the first out. So that was disadvantaging, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans. Kimberly Crenshaw is in the legal space, so she was looking at it from a legal perspective. But this is where intersectionality theory was born. So what basically it is about is, depending upon your characteristics, so it could be your visible characteristics, it could be non-visible characteristics, it could be your class, race, a whole range of things if you have a disability. So as an individual, if you have multiple identity characteristics, it can create particular outcomes for you in terms of labour market outcomes, access to the labour market that disadvantage you. So we know that if you're a woman, maybe a white woman, my access to the labour market perhaps is at a disadvantage compared to a white man. So, white Anglo-Saxon Christian male. So this is kind of the ideal male sort of stereotype here, in Western countries. So then, so women are disadvantaged. But then if you look at a woman who is of a migrant background, then their disadvantage increases because they have multiple identity characteristics. So like in my research as well, I was saying, well, migrant women, these very highly skilled migrant women were coming in. They were from a foreign country, foreign qualifications, speak a foreign language, have accent, have identity characteristics that are different, that are visible. They have children as well that are young. So they're trying to manage so much.
Yes.
So all of these things intersect together.
I see.
And create an outcome that is not advantageous for accessing the labour market.
I see.
So what would happen is, we know about traditional male careers.
Yeah.
We know about traditional careers for women, nursing, teaching, childcare. So my example of my participant, who was a civil engineer, very highly qualified from a Middle Eastern country, came to Australia. She, young children, decided that they tried very hard to get into, even offered to work for free.
Wow.
But there's issues around workplace health and safety. So, but I'm sure that something could have been arranged.
Yeah.
They decided to change career and work as a childcare assistant because it's a very feminised skill. So women then feel because they are naturally, the idea is they're naturally geared towards these caring types of professions. They make a decision then and go, well, I care for children and I need to be able to, I want to go and work. I haven't come to Australia to not work. And of course, it's you want to contribute. As well to society, and many women, felt they'd come to Australia, they couldn't use their skills. How could they contribute? So out of that then comes what's called downward occupational mobility. So what that means is you come in as the skilled civil engineer at this level as a professional. But your identity in terms of professional career takes a downward, slide to a less skilled.
Overqualified.
Yes, so they are overqualified, but they can't use those qualifications to find commensurate employment. So they go into more traditional feminised employment, which is less skilled. And as a result, so we have downward occupational mobility. So, and then, we as a nation, as a productive economy, lose that skill set as well.
That's true.
So that's a challenge and a problem. So it's not just affecting the individual and their identity as a professional, but we're losing that skill set in a,
bigger picture of economy,
Exactly.
Right.
So, so it is quite interesting. And, so in my PhD, I document 25 skilled migrants. And what I did was it was a longitudinal study. So I interviewed them initially and talked to them about their experiences with coming to Australia, what they aspire to be, to continue doing in terms of their careers. But then 12 months later, I went back to them and I said, okay, where are you now in your career journey here in Australia? And they would tell me about it. And through speaking with these 25 participants over 12 months, and I would keep in touch with them, and I've kept in touch with them since as well, understanding their strategies. Okay, things weren't working, they weren't applying for jobs in the same way. So there was differences as well that we picked up on in terms of application processes. But it's like, okay, what are you doing then to try and get back into your career? So some of them would go and
take apprenticeship.
Well, they would go to TAFE, or they would go to university, or they would access an adult migration education program that would be offered through our local government. There were some migration centres as well that provided employment programs, and they would place people into different organisations based on their skill set. And some of them got work that way as well, but not necessarily in their exact profession, but they would still be using their skills. So, you know, there were some positives, but, you know, some of the men that I interviewed, so where women were getting positions, say, in early childhood education or childcare centres, the men would be getting positions, you know, they'd be engineers as well coming, but they were getting jobs as taxi drivers or security. Working, so they'd be doing night shifts and be driving around and checking car yards and making sure that no one was stealing cars. So again, downward occupational mobility based on, you know, all of the issues that we talked about earlier.
Right. Very interesting. Your experience showed that your research has been motivated by your deep concern with gender and then migrant and then skilled migrant.
Correct.
You've been working quite long in Griffith. You mentioned that more than 15 years. Right?
Yes.
Right. And you have done research as well. How far have you seen the improvement being done by the government in fixing this migrant issues, gender-based issues? Can you share how you see the progress and the best practice that has been introduced so far in Australia?
Absolutely. So, as Ramora said, I have been at Griffith University for a period of time. As an academic, I've been in academia for 10 years at the end of this year. But of course, if you add on my PhD yes, and previous to that, I also worked in the professional side of the university as well before going out into industry. So I've worn many hats. I've been a student, I've been a professional staff member, now an academic. So what I have seen over the since completing my PhD at the end of 2014, you know, there's still the same issues, there's still the challenges. One of the things that we do have in Australia is we have quite a large focus on gender as an issue. And there are regulations around, through the Workplace Gender Equality Act, looking at ways that we can improve outcomes for women in the workplace. So in the regulatory space, there's nothing around sort of race. We have anti-discrimination acts, and which is really important. But there aren't any specific programs. But what I am seeing is that there are organisations that are adopting, you know, best practices, policies in supporting diversity, inclusion and belonging in the organisations. And, you know, we've seen in our public sector, particularly in government, in universities, good policy and practice, and we find that private organisations will take the lead. And one of the things is as well, in terms of diversity, is what we call the business case, which is about, unfortunately, selling the idea of diversity and the benefits to business, the benefits in terms of innovation, ideas, outcomes in productivity. The business case is about if you are employing people, you know, and from diverse backgrounds, that's going to add to your innovation and productivity. So it's going to have good outcomes for you in terms of the bottom line. But, you know, there's also the moral case as well, which is, you know, from a social justice, human perspective, you know, we should be employing people. It's not just about the money.
I see.
It's, you know, it's about the benefits to individual, benefits to society, and that everyone contributes and can contribute equally. So there are great programs.
Yes.
And for people who are looking to work in Australia, I would be directing them to doing some research, looking at the organisations that they want to join, and looking at the diversity policies and practices that they've got in place. Gold Coast Hospital, you've recently been at the Gold Coast and at Griffith University, and opposite where you were spending a lot of time is the large Gold Coast Hospital.
Right.
Their Human Resource Management Department implemented a fantastic diversity and inclusion program.
Can you mention a few of them?
So the policies and practices that they have is, you know, recognising that, you know, career progression, you know, that there is equity and that there's bias taken out in that process. Recognition of particular cultural events as well, so that people can feel included. So they developed a calendar of all of the different observations and celebrations, so that, you know, people felt like they were included but also belong. So I think belonging is a very important part of people, you know, feeling included in the organisation. You know, when we talk about access to policies and programs, we all have equal access to be able to take parental leave, you know, those sorts of things. And I think the other thing that's important is that if you've got a framework in your organisation that supports diversity, that values the contribution and the skills that people bring, you're going to attract the best and brightest into the organisation.
Exactly.
And those people are going to want to stay in the organisation. So it's going to have benefits for retention and costs around recruitment. And it's going to be, you know, and particularly say if you're in the private sector, so like Atlassian, a big IT-based company in Sydney.
Project management software, is it?
Yes. So, and they're worldwide, and they are very heavily into diversity practices as well. So again, showcasing that they, you know, have these great programs and policies, and to attract the best and brightest. And one of the lovely things about Atlassian that I really liked was they had a community service program where their staff could take time out of the organisation and go to a developing country and go and spend time over there as a volunteer. You know, so there's all these kinds of things that, you know, organisations can do to attract, and they particularly attract, say, a younger demographic. So I guess when we're thinking about our workforce and we're thinking about the people in our organisations, we're not just thinking about identity in terms of gender, you know, gender or race, but age, you know, age diversity as well. What appeals to a particular, you know, demographic group in terms of age in that sense as well. So I think Atlassian were great in terms of, yes, we want to attract people, but you know, a younger perhaps cohort through this particular program. But other organisations may offer transition to retirement programs for older workers who still want to stay in the workforce and contribute, but as they become older, they perhaps have other activities that other passions that they might want to do. They might want to work in the community, in volunteer work. They might have young grandchildren that they want to spend time with. They might want to take up a hobby. Yeah. So, you know, there's ways that we can look at the different, you know, age span in terms of the sorts of programs and policies that organisations can implement to support the workforce.
Very interesting initiative from many different private institutions.
Yes.
Because we have a very tight time.
Yes.
I would just like two last questions.
Yes.
Yeah. The next one is, you know, in Indonesia, we are seeing that many young people who have undergrad degree already, they took work visa for summertime and work in a vineyard in Australia, doing, just like you said, less skilled roles.
Yes.
And they actually don't mind because the pay is like maybe several times higher than the minimum wage in Indonesia.
Right, yes.
But do you see any unintended consequences if they do this, or it's actually depends on the person? If they are happy, then it's actually improving their career so they can collect money to maybe do further study. What kind of scenario would you see this?
Well, I guess I think it comes down to the individual and the reasons for why. You know, I see a lot of people coming on the, you know, working in seasonal kind of, you know, picking grapes or, you know, any other types of fruits or vegetable in these sort of seasonal arrangements. They come to work to you know, earn obviously money. Sometimes it's to remit money back to the home country. Right. It's about an experience. It's about learning about the Australian labour market. It's about networking and meeting people. And I think it's a wonderful experience as long as you're being treated well. You know, being treated well by your employer, you are being paid right, you are being given the right conditions. Right. So what I would say to anyone that is coming to Australia, you know, to be aware of our workplace regulations.
Right. Can you tell about that more?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have the Fair Work Commission and the Fair Work Ombudsman. So the Fair Work Commission, it relates to the courts. If there are particular issues around employment, these sorts of things get worked out through the court system. But they oversee the regulations, the laws around, you know, the labour market. And the Fair Work Ombudsman provide information to the general public about what their rights and the regulations and what their entitlements are in the workplace, what the minimum wage is. So you can go to the Fair Work Ombudsman website and you can find information to make sure you're being paid correctly.
That's a good idea.
And if you're not, you can contact the Fair Work Ombudsman and anonymously report and say, I'm working for this particular business. They're not paying me properly. They're giving me cash in the hand and it's $5 an hour as an example. That's an extreme example. Whereas the minimum wage might be, you know, $23 an hour. And so it's like, this employer's not, you know. So the Fair Work Ombudsman actually are tasked with investigating businesses that are not doing the right thing. And you can actually go and read on the website businesses. So I get an update, you know, a couple of times a week of a couple of, you know, businesses that are not doing the right thing, and they've been taken through the court system and had to, you know, pay back their employees, and also are fined as well. So, you know, I've seen it in childcare, in restaurants and hospitality. There's recently this week in construction. So this is why we have the Fair Work Ombudsman as an agency that is there to provide information to people, but sometimes it's quite difficult to know if you're new to the country. You don't really know. But always ask someone. Yes.
Right. The other day we also chat about the uniqueness of Australian industrial relation and employment workplace.
Yes.
Can you briefly share about what is unique about Australian system?
Okay. So, the Australian system is quite a complex system. The uniqueness about the Australian system is that we have kind of many layers in terms of, I guess it's about the pay and working conditions. Right. So we have the minimum wage, which I mentioned, and we have national employment standards, which set the groundwork for the minimum standards of employment in Australia under the federal system. Over time, Australia started to develop what we call awards. And we had over 4,000 awards across Australia. And it would be like, for example, rail and tram and couriers, you name it, anything where anybody worked, there was an award for them. More recently, since about the mid-90s, we've gone through a modernisation process where we've reduced over 4,000 awards to 122 awards.
Okay, that's good.
So we have them for pilots, we have them for vets, we have them for childcare, we have miscellaneous ones. If someone doesn't fall into a particular category, there's something there for everyone. So again, these particular awards, which is a unique part of the Australian system, nowhere else, it basically details the conditions of employment. It separates out the different skills, levels and types of jobs so that an employer would know, what a cook would be, a pastry chef compared to a sous chef. For example, there might be some differences in skills, so they might get paid accordingly. There would be information about leave, as in parental leave, sick leave, those sorts of things. So a worker can go and see what they're entitled to, but also an employer can make sure that they're adhering to those awards to pay people correctly and give them the right terms and conditions of employment. Then we have something called enterprise agreements.
Yes, what is that?
So an enterprise agreement is something that is negotiated between an employer and the workforce. And quite often unions, as a third party, trade unions, will negotiate on behalf of workers. So if you imagine like Griffith University, for example, we have quite a large workforce. Say we've got 4,000 staff. Just off the top of my head, I don't know if that's exactly correct, but say if we, as a ballpark, we've got this amount of employees. Of course, for the organisation to negotiate one-on-one with 4,000 people, it takes a lot of time. So the union will negotiate on behalf of those. So the union will meet with groups and find out what the needs are, what the workplace issues are. We'll go and negotiate an agreement around pay and conditions.
More efficient,
to put it very simply. They're generally ongoing negotiations, but usually once an agreement is made, they last between 3 and 4 years. And the Fair Work Commission, who I mentioned before, they will review the enterprise agreements before they kind of give them the rubber stamp of approval. And what they do is they make sure that the agreement is, they do something called a better off overall test. So they make sure that what's in the enterprise agreement doesn't make an employee worse off compared to the award, right?
Okay, it should be better off. Yeah?
So generally it's better. So there's generally better pay. So if you looked at the award for higher education workers like myself, and you compare that to our enterprise agreement, you'll see that the enterprise agreement has better terms and conditions, better rates of pay.
Yeah.
So I kind of look at it as a bit of a triangle where you've got the base, which is your national employment standards, then you've got your awards, then you've got your enterprise agreement. But we also have common law contracts as well, which is generally for people who are working for an organisation, and there's like a negotiated arrangement, and it's for quite a high sort of salary range as well. So yeah, we're quite unique, and it's quite interesting because you know, I know that there are challenges for employers in terms of negotiating or reading and understanding the awards and agreements. And that's why it's important that we educate our human resource management students and our employment relations students with the skills so that they can support workplaces to do the right thing. So that I end up in the Fair Work Commission. This is what we try and educate our students is, let's make sure that you're providing the right information for an employer to keep them out of the court system. And of course, if you're in, you know, as I was telling you before, the Fair Work Ombudsman has investigated a number of businesses, but say if it's for sexual harassment, you know, anything like that, an organisation doesn't want to have, you know, the bad press associated with that as well. So, you know, it's really important. But of course, you know, we have proper processes within our organisations to investigate issues as well. Proper policies and programs and proper training as well. That's really important to sort of mitigate against these potential issues.
Thank you, Sue. It's a very comprehensive explanation about the 4-layer of Australian industrial relation and workplace system. I think many of our audience will benefit a lot. They will understand that Australia has already had system in place to ensure diversity, inclusion, and even place for people with special needs. I think this helps them to transition to, if they would like, to transition to Australian workplace better and maybe contribute to the economy and vice versa. Maybe Australian can further, who listen to this can compare Australian system with another country.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate your time and your advice. Next time when we talk about workplace relationship, please let us invite you again.
Oh, absolutely. It would be my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hivers, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I understand that you would have a lot of insight from this podcast. We are thankful for Sue to come to this podcast, and I will see you again on another inspiring podcast with another distinguished speakers. Bye-bye.